Okay, so now we have our next speaker. His name is Daniel Foley. He's an esteemed SEO evangelist with an impressive track record spanning over 2 decades. As a director of Assertive SEO Audits IO, SEO Stack, Daniel Foley SEO Consultancy, and Scooter Guide. Daniel has established himself as one of the best SEOs in the United Kingdom. With a career that began in 1999, Daniel Foley witnessed the evolution of the search marketplace, navigating through the era of search engines such as MSN, Yahoo, and others. Today, Daniel will tell us about SEO Audit. Welcome, Daniel. Hello, Daniel.
Hi, nice to meet
Oh,
you.
I'm so glad to see you here today. We were waiting for
Fantastic,
you. How are you feeling
fantastic.
today?
Yeah, I'm not too bad, not too bad. I've literally been inundated with SEO audit bookings, so it's been this year's probably been the most crazy I've ever seen it, and there's definitely been a boom in demand on the audit front. I don't know whether or not that's just down to LinkedIn exposure or via organic, but yeah, it's been very good.
But it's great. Are you ready to share your experience with us?
I am indeed. So I'm just going to pull my presentation up.
Yeah, great. And I would like to remind all our participants that you can ask all your questions. Please be ready to write your questions. And also, I would like to remind you that all our courses, SEO courses, are available for as less as $999 only until the end of this day. Okay, are you ready? Don't forget, be active, please.
Right, so I'm just going to pull up my screen.
Yes. Okay, guys, tell me, please. Yeah, we can see your presentation. We can see your screen.
So what I was going to do is just maybe very quickly provide a bit of a backstop about me, my history, and then to explain a bit more about auditing and why I've gone down the route of launching SEO Audits IO. So just to provide a little bit of context about me, I started in the SEO industry in 1998, between 1998 and 1999, before Google was a mainstream search engine. So when I started out doing SEO, there were hundreds of smaller search engines such as Alta Vista, FreeServe, Lycos, Hotbot. In the UK, over the years, when I started out in my SEO career, it was mainly at home, building small websites in Microsoft Front Page, and then moving on to Dreamweaver. And then over the years, I started my SEO career working in SEO agencies. So in the early to mid 2000s, I worked for large international SEO agencies. After that, I realized that with the amount that the agencies were charging clients and the amount that I was getting paid, I realized that I could just do it on my own. So in 2006, I decided to start an SEO agency called Assertive. And from 2007, I went fully independent running Assertive. Now, in the UK, whenever I've launched a business, I've always made a habit of using my own SEO expertise to rank for my own stuff. So I launched Assertive Media back in 2007. And for the best part of 10 years, we ranked number 1 across the UK and in some parts of the world for SEO agency. I then launched an SEO consultancy in 2019, and I now rank number 1 for SEO consultant. And then I launched SEO Audits IO. Now, ironically, today I'm number 2, but I generally float around number 1 and number 2 for SEO audits. Now, to give a little bit of backstop, so I spent years and years and years working in the SEO agency background, and effectively what I decided to do was to branch it off and to offer a specialist auditing service. And the reason for that is because in all of the years that I've been working with clients doing SEO, I was often sent previous work from previous businesses, previous consultants who might have been working on a client account. And effectively, what happened was I would be sent the audits, I would be sent various different pieces of historic work. And what I noticed was in most of the audits that I was getting sent, they were the same repeat automated pieces of content, just in a different format, different order. But it would be the same usual PDF template with a company logo on, a bit of information about the company, and then there would be a load of generic information. So the purpose of an SEO audit. So most people in SEO will know, and even people that are in general digital marketing will know, that an SEO audit is basically to find technical issues with a website, top level, that might impede how a website is crawled and indexed. Generally, an SEO audit will be a list of fixes and things that need improvement, a summary of issues and resolution, and some competitor insights. Now, depending on the audit and where the audits come from and who's conducted it, some audits may go further into looking at things such as content coverage. Some audits will provide top level information around things like links. But in general, the biggest problem that I would see with audits is automation. Now, you might say, what is the problem with automation with SEO audits? Well, there's a
Daniel, excuse me, please. Could you please open your presentation so we can see all the words? Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much. Sorry for interrupting.
So, and obviously, if there's questions, I'll answer at the end. But in short, so an SEO audit is something that people will conduct early on in SEO relationship or pre-SEO relationship. And it will be used to find what the problems, what things need fixing. And hopefully, based upon these things, you do these things and they provide some form of resolution in terms of improving rank. However, this is not the case. And just before I start going through this, whenever we talk about SEO audits, we're talking about something where someone does some analysis, we find a problem, and then we can provide a summary of that problem or a resolution. And you'll see a lot of businesses use free SEO audits as a way of trying to get new potential clients on board or through the door. But the reality is that SEO audits shouldn't be based on just automation. Now, SEO audits have been around for as long as SEO has been around, except SEO back in the early days was far more simple than it is now because search engines were not complex. Even Google in the early days was looking at how often keywords appeared in content. It literally was very, very basic many, many years ago. And audits didn't have a lot that they could include, as long as you didn't have doorway pages, as long as you didn't have hidden white text, basic thing to do with internal and external links, but it was all very basic. Modern day SEO audits can include hundreds of checks. They can check everything from missing alt attributes to missing header tags to excessive content to orphan pages to 404s to too many redirect chains. There are lots and lots of checks that are conducted in today's audits. However, most audits generally have a high level of automation behind them. And you might say, well, there's no problem with that, but there is. And let me explain. So this is one of our skeletons that we use. I'll zoom in. Okay, it's not letting me zoom in. Hold on one second. There we go. Right. Okay, so most people that have some SEO experience will no doubt have seen an SEO audit. And a lot of SEO audits will present themselves as something that is generally exported from a tool. So you have tools like SEMrush, you have tools like Ahrefs, you have things like Sitebulb. There are lots of tools out there that will crawl a site. They will find all of the technical issues and they will present them in an online format, or they'll give you the ability to put your logo on it and export it, which is fine. However, with a lot of audits, they don't generally actually take into consideration the things that truly matter. And I'll get into the basis of that shortly. Now, effectively, we have what's called a skeleton checklist. So a skeleton checklist is the initial set of checks that we would expect to make when we're analyzing each website. And effectively, the skeleton check will provide the framework, and then we'll take into consideration when we're doing an audit, what other things are we finding that aren't part of a skeleton check. So effectively, we have the skeleton checklist and we evolve this. Now, what we do is we typically have a skeleton checklist, and we produce all of our Google slides manually, and we'll go through and I'll show you an example of that. But when we do an audit, what we're doing is we're taking into consideration what's called actual data. So we take into consideration data that's driven by Google Search Console. So we will tear through all of the various aspects of Search Console data to understand exactly how Google's treating a site. We will look at all of the general technical compliance. So is Google able to index content? Is it able to understand the context of content? Are their pages competing with one another? Are there structural integrity issues, JavaScript issues, and whatnot? We segment out page indexing. So we'll also go through how Google is indexing content or not indexing content. And the checklists that we have are substantial. So the reason that SEO Audits IO exists as an independent business is because what we do is we manually go through and create all of this data. Now, if we're creating it manually and people are doing it automated, what's the problem with automation? I mean, we're now seeing AI, ChatGPT bring unfathomable levels of automation to the table, the ability for people to speed up things. So why would I sit here and advocate a manual process? Well, the biggest problem is that if you take, let's say, a third-party crawling tool and you crawl a website, you know, it doesn't matter what the crawl tool is, it's not going to take into consideration the things that really matter, as I will elaborate on. Now, the end reason that people or businesses buy audits is because they have an SEO problem, they want a solution. And so many businesses jump from one SEO resource to another, and we go through the same process over and over again, where they'll have an audit conducted, and they'll go through the same process of having an automated audit, a checklist, people implement things, and then things typically might go somewhere or they might not go anywhere. And there's a good reason for that. So I set up SEO Audits IO primarily because after spending so many years enveloped in SEO, I decided that I was going to niche down and really get to the bottom of owning the SEO audit space. And in doing this, fundamentally, if you do an audit that is extremely comprehensive, it takes into consideration all of the actual data, you're more likely to find the nuggets of things that make a difference when it comes to ranking. So the general common theme for the hundreds of audits that I've been sent over the last year, 2 years, was I kept just seeing the same thing over and over again. It would be a heavy emphasis on things like core web vitals. It would be a heavy emphasis on crawl items. It would be a heavy emphasis on really top level things. And the reality is that a lot of technical issues have very little, if any, SEO value. So in most of the websites I have ever worked on, I don't bother with core web vitals to the point of having to sacrifice user experience to get a good score. I don't do it. Generally, I'll make sure that it's at need improvement level, so the website loads quickly and doesn't impede conversion rate. But I won't chop an arm off to save a leg because of a page speed score. And there's the same thing, basic recommendations that come out of tools that Google really doesn't pay all that much attention to when you start looking at other factors such as, are you giving users something that they can actually use and benefit? Now, there's something that I always teach when I do my webinars. So SEO Audits IO has on it a whole webinars section. And in these webinars, I basically teach a lot of concept and logic. So what I mean, when I say Google is not linear, Google is not looking at how many alt tags you've put words into or content into. It's not looking at, are your titles all below 64 characters in length? It's not looking for these things. These things might enhance how Google gets or interprets the data, but these aren't the things that really matter. Now, there are countless sites. I bet you could pick any keyword off the top of your head, Google it, take the top 10 sites, and actually go and check how compliant they are in lots of areas. And you'll find that most sites fail in lots of different areas. Technical compliance is important to a point. If Google can index your content, it can render your pages, it can understand your site architecture, and you don't have pages competing against one another, you've won a good chunk of the battle right there. And then the next parts of it really come down to brand, trust, EEAT, experience, expertise, authority, and trust, YMYL, your money or your life, helpful content, user engagement, and other factors. Now, I use this one as an example. In the UK, there is a website called vatcalculator.co.uk. This site is a brilliant example because I've worked with it since 2008, and it's ranked for more than 15 years at #1 for VAT Calculator as an exact match domain. Now, this site, and you can check it in Ahrefs as well in the position history, this site has ranked consistently #1 for VAT Calculator and loads of other relevant terms. The website doesn't use HTTPS. It's not even mobile friendly, and yet it ranks #1 in Google on mobile for VAT Calculator. Yes, it has had content updates over time, very marginal content updates, but in the last 3 years, it's been neglected and it's sustained rank. And it's an exact match domain. Why do sites that aren't technically compliant rank? Well, Google will trump all of the other things if it thinks that what you have to offer is going to be good for the end user. Why did this site sustain rank? It sustained rank because it came up many years ago, prior to more of the complex algorithms like Google Rank Brain. And effectively, once it ranked, Google had the signals that it was doing its job. But what I mean by that is people were Googling VAT Calculator, going to the website, using it because it's right there, it's easy to use, and then ending their session and not going back to Google. Okay. Now, if we talked about an SEO audit, if someone did an audit on this site, there'd be loads of problems. It'd be atrocious. But if it's not broken, you wouldn't fix it. And this is the common theme that I constantly see with SEO audits. SEO audits do not take into consideration the things that really matter. So, what are most SEO audits? Most SEO audits are automated. Now, not fully. What a lot of businesses and consultants may do is they may use SEMrush or Ahrefs or Sitebulb or JetOctopus or any number of crawling tools. They may take snippets from that out, snip it, put it into a PDF or a Google slide deck, and that's fine. There is nothing intrinsically wrong in addressing issues that are highlighted by crawl tools. You'll have panels like this within tools like Ahrefs, which will basically give you a health score. Now, this is the same problem that I see with content scoring. People have this idea that a health score, it might be in a health score provided by a tool, that may correlate with improved rank, where in reality, this health score is only proprietary to the tool. Google doesn't evaluate and provide a health score based on these things. It's really going to be looking at so many different factors, hundreds of interconnecting factors. So when we talk about auditing, what we have to do is we have to understand the concept of actual data versus projection data. So let me explain by that. So if Googlebot comes to your site and it crawls your site, the main problems from an SEO perspective that might impede rank are things such as if Googlebot comes to your site and it can't index content or it can't render content. Let's say you've got a JavaScript driven website and Google can't properly render the page, or it can't get the content because the content is preloaded, or it's injected in after page load. Technical compliance from a point of Google being able to access and render the content is absolutely crucial. But when we often look at what crawl tools will do, they will look at more of the basic things. You know, image file size too large, page has broken image, you know, 4xx page, 404 page. You know, it's not to say that these things shouldn't be addressed, but it's the fact that in most audits that we see, these are the things that are emphasized. Now, you may have already seen there are tons and tons of spreadsheets on the internet around auditing. You know, auditing, spreadsheets, templates, and don't get me wrong, they're great. They're great for saving time. If you can get a list of all the things that need doing, they're great. Except they're not great unless the person doing the audit fully understands the concept. So where does SEO auditing go wrong? Okay, so I'm just going to pull in another window. Okay, so where does SEO auditing go wrong? So let me explain a very top level scenario. Okay, we all have to start somewhere in the SEO industry. I started in the SEO industry, had no idea. I spent years and years getting things wrong, practicing. And as an SEO, even today, I still learn. And one of the things that I do today is I teach. Now, if you have a tool that can do 70% of the work for you, but you don't have a full comprehensive understanding of what it is that's actually being looked at, the problem is that anyone can be a perceived expert. If you take this data and you print this and, you know, or you put your logo on it, and maybe you'll take some snapshots and you'll break it out into more of a report that you send a client, that's great. But the problem is that with a lot of SEO, when you take this information that's very top level and you send it to a client and you say, you know, we need to fix these things, you know, we've got a whole list of issues, we need to address these things, and then we fix them, you're then going to be looking at the correlation between what you've done here and an increase in rank. And the reality is that, as I said earlier, if you take any keyword that you, off the top of your head, and you Google it and you run checks on these sites, you'll often find that they don't have great technical compliance. So let me give you an example. Okay, if we take a website and we're going to use Bulkco. Okay, now this is a website that I've owned for the last couple of years, and I basically built this for fun, for SEO experimentation. And what I do in the SEO world is that I won't say to people something is a ranking factor and then have nothing to back it up. And what I did with this site was I wanted to prove that user engagement and behavior had an impact on organic performance. Okay, so I'm just going to show you this. So typically what I do is I run hundreds of microsites and I do SEO testing on them. Okay, and this is why, another reason why I branched into audits, because what I do is I do testing and then I take this behavioral data into consideration. Now, if we look here and I add my Bulkco website, which unfortunately I let the domain expire and then I just realized it. So it was down for a while and unfortunately it lost some rank. But bear in mind, this is just a dummy play around site. You can see here that I ranked #1 for a fairly, well, I mean, keyword difficulty is not even actually something I would advocate using, but wholesale alcohol, you know, it's a relatively good term. And I ranked #1 for that with a dummy website. Okay, this website is completely dummy. Now, what I did was I built this website and people could add products to their shopping basket and they could spend minutes filling up a basket, but they couldn't check out because it's not a real site. So people were spending on average 7 to 8 minutes going through loads of pages, filling up a basket. Then what I did was I disabled all of the products Okay, so people could no longer transact. And what they would do is they would come and see that everything was out of stock. Okay, and that significantly reduced the volume of pages per session. It decimated average time on page and per session. And not long after I did that, I started to lose rank. Okay, so with something like this site come up with no general on-site stuff. So it doesn't have a great link profile. It doesn't use alt attributes, doesn't have a good content architecture, but it ranks. And why does it rank? It ranked because for the term wholesale, I knew the concept of getting something to rank on the term wholesale meant that Google would probably look, if I was trying to rank for something wholesale, that I should have a large volume of products. And that's exactly what I did. I created hundreds and hundreds of fictitious products at wholesale, and that allowed it to rank. Now, an SEO audit is not going to take that into consideration. Now, when we look at something like this, okay, if I put this into SEMrush, okay, now I use SEMrush, and again, I have to stipulate SEMrush is an absolutely brilliant tool. It's great as a marketer's toolbox. Personally, it's not something that I actively use. Now, with SEMrush, the data here is all projection data. This is basically as a culmination of SEMrush scraping the web, crawling the web, and then every time it saw bulk co in a position for a keyword, it would get that keyword and it would add it to these keyword counts. Okay, and this data is projection data. It's not actual data. Whereas so many SEO audits that I see use this data. Now, you might say, what's wrong with using this data? This data was grossly inaccurate. Okay, so what happens is that if you've got people doing SEO audits that are using projection data and then using automated crawls, you're not taking into consideration the things that really, really matter. So, with all of this in mind, I decided that I was going to launch SEO Audits IO as a platform. And I also teach people about the concept. So, first of all, when we're auditing a site, what we need to take into consideration from point one, and the first thing that we always need to look at is Google Search Console. This should be the absolute number one priority for anyone looking at data, okay? Because Google Search Console gives you the data that Google has on your site. Or does it? Now, some of you may or may not know me or my background, but basically, I launched something called SEO Stack, which is basically a replacement for Search Console. Now, if we're going to audit a website, the general consensus is that we're going to want access to all of this information. So, for example, when we start out with an audit, we're going to want to understand what does the client's traffic profile look like? And then we're going to want to start segmenting that. If we're to understand what things really matter, we have to reverse engineer the Search Console data. So things we might look at is top level Search Console data. What we will then want to have a look at is how much of their organic traffic profile is driven by brand. We're going to want to fully strip back and understand what their traffic profile is composed of. So, for example, if I've got a 1,000-page website, okay, and I'm conducting an audit, the first thing that I'm going to want to understand is what does the website's traffic profile look like? How much of the site gets traffic? How much of it doesn't get traffic? How much of that traffic is influenced by brand? Okay. So when we go through our checklist, what we do is sequentially, step by step, we'll go through. So we want to understand what the traffic looks like over the last 16 months. We want to look at how clicks drop off over all of the queries. Now, many of you working on SEO campaigns or conducting audits might be looking at the principle of ranking for a keyword. And the thing that I teach now is stop focusing on keywords, stop focusing on a specific keyword. And I'll explain in the next few minutes why. I want to understand, for all of the pages that get traffic, how well are those pages holding traffic? How many of those pages are losing traffic? How many are gaining traffic? How many are stagnant? Because then I can take all of the pages that are losing traffic and I can put them at the front of the strategy to say, well, we need to start here and we need to address the losses at page level. Then what I'll do is a last 3-month year-on-year compare. What does the traffic look like for the same 3 months just gone as the same time last year? Because then we ruled out losses or traffic changes due to seasonality. Brand versus non-brand performance. How much influence on our clicks does brand have? What brand traffic is, what pages are being heavily influenced by brand traffic? Then I'll generate a regex in Search Console to get rid of all of the brand searches. Then I'll look at non-brand. What does non-brand look like? Where does non-brand traffic go? And you'll see here that there is an extensive list of all of the things that go into an audit. This you cannot automate. This requires a human eye. Now, if you're going to do an audit, you're better off doing something properly than using something at surface level. Surface level auditing is great if you're trying to win some new business, but just keep this in mind. If you're using free audits or surface audits to win new business, you're not going to be the only ones doing it. So expect clients to not be wowed or impressed by it. Where you do stand to gain an advantage is if you show them data that is far more segmented and that you understand their brand. So, for example, now obviously I'm on very limited time. This is one of my smaller audits, and this is 800 slides long. Now, I've already had lots of people say, Daniel, this is ridiculous. No one cares about 800 slides. No one's going to read it. Well, you'd actually be surprised. People do. And what happens is with the audit, they get this checklist. So they don't need to read the slides, but the slides are there. And you might say, well, what's the point in doing the slides? Well, the point in doing the slides is that as I research, I understand the data and I put the data there. It's no skin off of my back if I'm looking at these metrics to take a quick snapshot and put it in there. And what it allows me to do is fully understand everything that's going on. Now, a huge chunk, more than 70% of the audits that I've been sent have no Search Console insight or data in them. Okay. And that is a massive fallacy because SEMrush might show a drop or Ahrefs might show a drop, but they might not give any context to where that drop's happening. And because they're projection tools, they don't have the same level of data. So we can look at all different aspects. Now, when we're auditing, the most important thing is that we fully understand where the traffic is going, and we'll perform things like click gap analysis. We'll look at how much of the index doesn't have clicks. We'll look at complete losses of search appearance data. Again, so many people may easily skip over these things. I've seen sites that lost 60-70% of their traffic just because they'd lost rich snippet features. Now, you know, you're not going to get the same level of detail when you're using third-party tools. Now, coming back very quickly. So when we look at Search Console, and I'll pull up Search Console just so that I can demonstrate this. Okay, so I'm just pulling up the domain. Okay. So effectively, SEO Stack was a tool that I started building because when I was auditing client websites, I was fed up with the limitations of Search Console. Now, what I'll do is I'll actually benchmark this just to give you an idea. So I'm going to use my office pod, and this should provide some really good context into the data. Okay, so I'm going to use SEMrush, Ahrefs, Search Console, and SEO Stack, and then I'll explain how this all fits in. Okay, so if I was auditing my office pod using SEMrush, you know, I'd see an upward traffic trend. I'd see the volume of keywords go up. Now, if we look according to SEMrush, there are 1,325 known keywords, 44 keywords at position in positions 1 to 3. Okay. If we now look here, we see reported 610 keywords. If we now look at April in SEO Stack, and we'll also do the same here. So we'll do April in Search Console. So what we get is 1,400 keywords, or around 1,000.
Daniel, I'm so sorry. Unfortunately, we have a limited time, and so many students had already left their questions. They would like to learn more about you and to use this time.
Yeah,
okay?
yeah, I can do that. I can also share.
Yeah,
I can share some of the examples of this so people can use it. I'll really just quickly, just to prove a point. So most people using tools like this will see Search Console has a limit of 1,000, Ahrefs reports 610, and the reality of it is that there were 2,943 keywords within the month. So when we're doing audits, we have to take into consideration where we get our data from. So in regards to some of the questions, okay, so I'm guessing they start with, is it a waste? Could you please provide some guidance on how to improve?
Could I read you some questions? So
yeah.
Firstly, Saidul says that very informative speech. Rutherford says top-notch stuff from Dan there. So everybody is very excited about your speech. The first question, it's been said that SEO will die due to ChatGPT. What's your stand, Daniel? What do you think about that?
That's absolutely not the case. So ChatGPT is not a search engine. And what people have to remember is that 20 plus years of habit are not broken overnight. People 20 years ago, 25 years ago, were going to a search engine, searching and finding what they want. ChatGPT is great for information collation and collection, but it's not a search engine. And even if AI encroaches into search like generative AI, people's behaviors are not going to change overnight.
Okay, so, but what about other tools, not ChatGPT, but other artificial intelligence? We have one more question. Can the invention of AI affect human contribution to SEO analysis?
So sorry, can you say that again?
Can the invention of AI affect human contribution to SEO analysis?
Yeah, so in terms of SEO analysis, AI will be good for things like big data modeling. In terms of evaluation, it's still very much a human-based task. AI will be more complementary in that it will be useful for taking large data sets and making sense of that data. But AI is not yet at the point where it will replace the human eye for evaluating.
But do you personally use artificial intelligence?
Yeah, so I use AI for things like query analysis. So typically, SEO Stack will take data from Search Console, We'll take all of that data. We'll use AI to do things like EEAT audits, YMYL audits. So AI is speeding up the rate that we can take the data and get a top level down low evaluation of the content.
Okay, great. Daniel, I would like to thank you so much again for your time and amazing presentation. I would encourage all our students to find Daniel on LinkedIn. You can find the link in our chat. Ask all the questions directly. Thank you so much for this amazing presentation. We are so happy to see you here today. Thank you again and have a nice day.
Thank you, Nadia. Have a nice day.